Hi, and welcome to EnviroCentre's Green Room. Meet the people on the front lines of climate action and find out what keeps them up at night.
Hi, I'm Mimi, and this week we're joined by Janice Ashworth from the city of Ottawa. Hi, Janice. Can you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Hi, Mimi. Yeah, glad to be here. My name is Janice, and I'm currently working as a project manager at the City of Ottawa on the Climate Change and Resiliency team. My role there is really to work on projects that will reduce energy consumption and carbon emissions from buildings. So private buildings, homes, commercial buildings, offices, apartments, that kind of thing. That's my main file at the city. Historically, I've been quite active in renewable energy and helping found the Ottawa Renewable Energy Co-op. And I've done some work in both solar and wind energy as well in my background.
Awesome. So we ask all our guests to share an environmental fact when they come on. So what do you have to share with us today?
Yeah, the fact that really kind of hit home for me was in David Attenborough's latest film, where he said that 96% of weight of mammals on the planet are humans and their livestock. I think it was about 1/3 humans, 2/3 livestock, and then 4% left for everything else. And that just, including whales, which are mammals, right? They're huge. So to me, that just really hit home with the part that, the relevancy to me, which is humans are really taking over too much space on this planet. And we need to be not only reducing our emissions, but thinking about how we create space for other forms of biodiversity.
That's crazy. I had no idea. That's really crazy that humans and then the animals that we raise take up that much space. So, what climate issue keeps you up at night?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's really kind of related to that one. So for me, I've always said I'm motivated by ecological justice. So what I mean by that is allowing other life forms to thrive and flourish in the way that they were, evolved to do so. And the fact that we're taking 96% of space for mammals, suggests that that's really not happening right now. So that's the issue that really motivates me. I mean, it comes out in my work that mostly relates to climate change mitigation. Climate change being the biggest threat to all life on Earth, including humans, but also other life forms. So for me, that's really kind of the issue that both keeps me up at night as well as gets me up in the morning. I would more importantly say, I'm really fortunate and grateful to feel a lot of drive and passion and energy towards this work that I've committed my life's efforts to.
Yeah, I love that you kind of reframed the question to be kind of like what gets me up in the morning instead, because it's true that when you're involved in climate work, it definitely is like a motivating thing. So when you think about this climate issue, what would you say is the solution?
Well, I mean, the simple answer to that is to reduce our footprint and reduce our population, right? So those are easy things to say, hard things to action. Reducing our population is something that is perhaps the policy that's the least talked about. And it's the most politically challenging one, right? But then also reducing our footprint is more within the realm of technical solutions and policy solutions. And that can be just simple. We'll talk about that, I think, in your next question. But reducing making our lives smaller by living in less space, having less resources that are needed to operate that space by making it more energy efficient, and living closer to home. So whether that be including both through our traveling as well as through our food choices, our consumption choices, making that just a smaller footprint on the resources of the planet can help free up space and capacity and resources for other life forms as well.
And so what would you say are the barriers to us taking those steps and reducing our footprint, I guess?
Oh, there are so many, right? I mean, there are so many. There's Worldviews. I guess I've just finished reading a book by Thomas Homer Dixon called Commanding Hope, and there was one part of that really struck home with me, which was this concept of worldview being the single biggest impact on our way of existing in the world. And also perhaps, arguably a very simple thing to sort of change overnight. If you're looking at sort of a systems change point of view, sounds like, well, worldviews are just a conversation or two away. So, and I do think that is what differentiates how people behave to a large degree, both corporations and the decisions made at the corporate boardroom table, which obviously has a big impact. Also our politics. So at the, within party politics or within our governing bodies, those are made up of individuals with worldviews. And I see it time and time again, both in my work at the City of Ottawa, my work as a nonprofit, in nonprofits before that, in small business before that, as a climate activist before that, or as an engaged citizen. Throughout all of this, the doors open and you can make things happen if those in decision-making, in positions of decision-making power want to make it happen, right? So that really comes down to kind of worldview. There's a path forward if, there's a path through all of these perceived barriers if we want to find them. And, that's very simple. That's a very simplified way of looking at these problems. There's obviously a much deeper challenge, which is we all have to agree. We all have to get on board. These solutions that we're modeling for the city of Ottawa in our climate change plan involve 98% of homes getting deep retrofits. So that means that it can't be a solution that is just decided, by a governing body, but it has to be something that every person actions in a fairly profound way, right? They have to retrofit their home, or the space that they're living in. They have to change how they're traveling from a fossil fuel vehicle right now to something that's zero carbon, whether that be a bicycle or an electric vehicle or the bus, right? So there has to very much be a change throughout the entire population, and that's the real barrier that I see. That's the biggest sort of challenge that I think we're going to face.
Changing the worldview and making sure that change is reflected in people's daily actions, I guess, is the hard part.
And some of that's going to be technical solutions. Some of that's going to be making things more affordable and more accessible. Things like, how would you insulate your home? Where would you start? Who do you talk to? Are there grants for that? Are there financing mechanisms for that? How do you get an electric vehicle? How do you get around? Are there bike lanes that you could take to bike to your appointment or to school instead of having to drive? Is there a world-class public transit system that's available so you don't need to own a car? Those kinds of policy and technical solutions are very much part of that shift, and making it easy and convenient. This has to be the easiest, most convenient choice for people. But it also has to be something that people as individuals are open to and are demanding of their politicians and their corporations, because we all know that corporations also have a lot of power these days in terms of influence of what's accessible and what's like technology solutions and social views, right?
Totally. So how would you say people can help to overcome these barriers and be a part of the solution?
Well, there's all sorts of things. I mean, I first always say insulate. Step number one, insulate. If all you do this winter is insulate your home, you'll be better off, and we'll all be better off for it. So, adding insulation to your attic, to your basement. EnviroCentre's got all sorts of resources and tips and financing available on their website for helping people do that to their homes. So insulate. Insulate your home, insulate your living space, insulate your body so you don't have to have the heat up as high. So that's the best place to start. Reduce the consumption. Keep the heat in, like caulking, weather stripping, like super boring things, but that's the place to start when it comes to reducing our impact. Also living smaller, so living in less space, traveling less, getting your food closer, getting your buying things that are local, making sure that what you buy can be recycled locally or composted locally, those kinds of, like, keeping your impact very as small as possible. Growing some of your own food maybe if you can. Getting involved in a community garden, working with a local farm to get some of your food produced there, that kind of thing. People can also help not just on their own private action, but also on the social change that we need to see. So worldviews change through conversation. So it's talking to your friends and family, making sure that you're not doing this in isolation, but working with your neighbors, making this something that that maybe your neighbors actually have some tips on how to insulate or how to reduce energy consumption in the home. So talk to them, help the others who haven't done it yet. Maybe there's a younger couple across the street that just bought the home. Maybe they need some contractor tips and references that would help them. Maybe they, need some information about the rebate programs, the financing programs available in their area. Those kinds of things help out your community and make sure that people know the values behind why you're doing it, because that will normalize all of this as well. And then also engaging your politicians, your policymakers, those in positions of decision-making power. And like I said, that's also corporations. So making sure that corporations know what you value, and your politicians know what you value, and that you're going to be holding them accountable to that too. So there's sort of individual action, keeping your footprint and your world a bit smaller, and then there's also engaging with your community and your those in decision-making power.
It's cool to see how I think you can tie individual and collective action together by talking about the changes you make in your daily life to kind of influence others. So I kind of like that about what you said. Individual, collective, and community action. They're all tied together by the fact of conversations, talking to friends and family, and influencing social change.
Yeah, I mean, we're made up. Our culture is made. It's a culture shift, right? And our culture is made up of words. We're defined by language, and how the language that we choose to use and the stories we choose to share, those directly influence our culture and our worldviews and our policymakers. So it's not being shy. As Canadians, we're so polite. We're so sort of not wanting to ruffle feathers or make people feel like we're judging them or anything like that, or they might judge us. But we can do this. We can have these conversations in a way that is approachable, and with curiosity, right? If we approach it with curiosity and with compassion, then I think it makes it much more sort of accessible. So I would encourage people to practice that as they engage with their community.
Yeah, lovely. So the final question we have, and my favorite question, is what is the good future?
Yeah, I looked at that question and I thought that's a very broad question. Love and community, if I summarize it very succinctly, love and community is what makes a good future, right? That's the richness in life is those two things. If you take it a bit more granular than that, I think it's where, equitable access to the necessary resources for a good life. I think that we want to see, social justice, social equity as part of this transition to climate justice, and ecological justice. And linking it back to some of the stuff I said before, I mean, biodiversity and space for other beings, I think to me is something that makes a good future. I think humans alone on the planet would get awfully sick of themselves if we were the only things left. So, and we depend on so many other species for our nourishment and flourishing as well. So, so that of course is part of the good future in my books. And yeah, I think we want to see, ideally, we avoid massive, climate disasters, and we can reduce the impact of those. Ideally, we also pull those who are really feeling most vulnerable out of those positions of marginalization and vulnerability, and we can do that through this transition towards a sustainable future. This energy evolution, as we define it in Ottawa, gives us opportunities to right all sorts of other wrongs in the community as well, right? So making affordable housing more affordable by also reducing its energy bills, not just by lowering the rent, and making affordable transit more, accessible to all by having it be available in all neighborhoods and providing, great service to all parts of Ottawa, regardless of their social class or their, tax base. So those kinds of outcomes as well.
Thank you. I think that's a beautiful way to summarize it. Love and community is what makes a good future, and kind of the importance of equitable access for everyone, not just humans, but everyone and all life on the planet. So yeah, thank you so much, Janice, for joining us today. And it was lovely to chat with you.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for setting this up, Mimi. Really good to have the chat.
That's it for this week's Green Room. Thanks so much for joining us as we get to the heart of climate action. You can find out more about our work and sign up for our newsletter at EnviroCentre.ca. Follow us on your favorite podcast app or subscribe on YouTube. See you next time.